So I'd like to thank those of you who are joining us tonight to learn about social emotional learning in Lindbergh. We're going to take a couple minutes to do introductions and a couple of housekeeping things. So we'll start off with introductions. My name is Tara Sparks. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the district, and I'm so pleased to introduce our esteemed panelists tonight. We have Dr. Jill Lawson, who's our Executive Director of Assessment and Student Services, and she'll serve as the moderator for tonight's conversation. And then we have 5 of our amazing elementary counselors who are joining us as well. We have Rachel Herman from Concord Elementary School, Ann Kleitch from Crestwood Elementary School, Joy Long, who's at both Crestwood and Long Elementary Schools, Kim Maddock from Long Elementary School, and Dory Busby from Sappington Elementary School. So we're so pleased and excited to have the 5 of you on to share this work with our families. For the families who are watching us tonight, you have a Q&A button on your screen where you can ask questions to our panelists, and they will be able to either integrate your questions into what they're sharing, or potentially even write back to you directly in that question and answer. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous presenters, and I'm actually going to go dark and just listen in as the non-expert in the room.
Thank you, Dr. Sparks. Tony, can you pull up the slides? First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, and we hope that this is informative for you all. As Dr. Sparks mentioned, we do have members of our counseling team here today, but please also know there are a number of other counselors who help contribute to this. And also, when we talk about social emotional learning in Lindbergh, it's not just a counseling thing. It is a huge collaboration. It's also our social workers, it's our teachers, it's our partner district, special school district, our administrators, and of course, all of our parents at home, because really this is a partnership when we're talking about developing these skills in kids. Also, I just wanted to kind of give just a couple little overview things. First, as we get a little bit further into the PowerPoint, you'll see that we list some programming that we have, but please know that some of our buildings have some of these things and some don't, and those things are decided on at the building level and based on building need. Like, I always like to think that each of our buildings has its own personality because it's made up of just unique kids in each building. And so really the staffs in those buildings are the ones that decide what each child needs. So really some of our stuff does overlap, but you might hear something and you're like, wait, I've never heard of that before. Just reach out to your building counselor. But like I said, each building has unique needs, and we try to address that. The other thing I just wanted to say before we started is a lot of the things that we're talking about in this presentation represent a typical year. And I think everybody at home and at school we can all agree that this was not a typical year. We made many adjustments for COVID-19. I feel like this is the most creative I've ever had to be in my entire career, just trying to come up with ways of doing what we know what's best for kids, but given kind of the confines that we have, either at school or working with kids who are virtual. So also please keep that in mind. A lot of the programming that we've listed is like I said, what we do typically. So we're excited to share this with you. We feel like the programming that we have in place really builds that culture of inclusiveness. And we're just really proud to share it with you. So Tony, next slide. These are just the 4 areas that we'll talk about tonight. First of all, we're going to talk about a definition for social emotional learning. Second, we're going to let you know why we think it's important. Third, like I said, we're going to point out some specific programming at each grade span and what we do district-wide. And then lastly, we have just some ideas for you at home. Next slide. And Rachel's going to take over.
Hello, I'm Rachel Herman. I'm co-counselor at Concord Elementary. with the amazing Gina Niebuhr, who could not be here tonight. And I am also the co-author of Colorful Counseling, which I am super grateful for Lindbergh. They were able to purchase it for all the elementary schools this year, and the second edition of the book is coming out this fall. So I'm super excited to let you know that as well. And I'm going to explain what is social emotional learning. And you've probably been hearing a lot about it in the news. It's certainly been something that's people are talking about, especially all the more with COVID this year. And first, you should know that Lindbergh's program is based on a framework from the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. It's called CASEL, and you can find them at casel.org, C-A-S-E-L. And I will tell you more on the next slide, Tony. So the fancy definition for social emotional learning, again from CASEL, is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. And from what you can tell, that encompasses quite a lot. And one of the ways that we attempt to build social emotional skills in children is through our lessons. And just like Anne was saying, that all buildings sort of do things a bit differently. We all do counseling lessons, but each building this year is kind of doing them a bit differently. And the children in the ARC program are also getting counseling lessons this year. The framework divides social emotional learning, you can see on the slide, into 5 sections. And it's important to note that just like academic skills, social emotional skills are also developmental. So what we are teaching to our kindergarten students is not the same information that's presented, say, to a 5th grader or an 8th grader. They might be similar skills, but of course, across time, we will build heavily as they grow older. Our goal is to create functional 21st century citizens, kids who can become successful once they launch from Lindbergh. And like I said, all students at the elementary level receive these lessons. As they get older, the social emotional instruction might look differently than just a counselor going into the classrooms. The 5 areas, though, that they do receive lessons in, as you can see here, there's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And all of these skills build upon one another with, to me, the responsible decision-making is sort of the cumulative end goal of what we're going for. So self-awareness is the understanding of who we are as human beings. It's what makes us not just a human, but a human being. It's our own thoughts, concept of who we are, our emotions, and lessons and groups in this area that we provide might be on growth mindset. In fact, that's what I'm teaching right now. Having that positive thought that this might be difficult, but I'm going to keep trying. Having integrity and having self-esteem and self-confidence. Self-management is managing or regulating our thoughts, emotions, values, and behaviors. First comes that awareness piece that we just talked about, and then would come the management of it. And so lessons in that area and groups in that area might include emotional awareness and building our emotional vocabulary, some goal setting, some organizational skills, things that keep our day-to-day life running smoothly. Then comes social awareness, another building block piece from CASEL, and that includes understanding how we're not just individuals, we are surrounded by other people throughout our day and throughout our lives. And so lessons in this area include things like cooperation, diversity, empathy, which leads directly into our relationship skills. So creating healthy bonds with those people, so we're not just living isolated lives, but that we're able to really build some healthy connections. And so students learn about conflict resolution. At Concord, we use what's called a peace table, which introduces steps for how children can solve problems with one another, dealing with peer pressure, and also just basic friendship skills. And all of these things then finally culminate into responsible decision making, which is the point of why we're doing all of what we're doing, is we're trying to get students ready to launch from Lindbergh and out into the world. And so it's putting it all together, applying all those skills to certain life choices that you make. So what kind of career do you want to have when you grow up? What are my post-high school plans going to be? But also things like, how safe am I in the world? Internet safety is a big issue right now. So those 5 areas, though, are really what each building will hit on. Again, lesson scheduling and the exact lessons that are presented might be a little bit different, same with groups, but we're all hitting on these key 5 key areas from CASEL. And again, with the final goal in mind, I'd like to share the next slide. Thanks, Tony. School shouldn't stop at preparing students to make a living. It should also prepare them to make a life. It's important to be a good neighbor, a good friend, and active participant in community. David Guerin. And as your elementary school counselors, that's our goal for your children. And now you're going to hear from Joy Long, who's at Crestwood and Long.
Hey everyone. So we just want to talk a little bit about, what are the benefits, why we think it's important to talk about social emotional learning. Of course, we're counselors, so we think it's super important. But actually, social emotional learning is something that all of the staff at Lindbergh is really committed to. And you'll hear a little bit later that we've actually branched out and all of our teachers are teaching social emotional learning curriculum. So we have a curriculum that our teachers are using at the elementary level and are being trained. We have a curriculum we're using at the middle school level. And then the high school has their own curriculum that they use. So all Lindbergh employees are really working on social emotional learning. It's not just the counselors. This is our jam. This is our, this is the stuff we love, but all of our teachers are really buying in to the idea that this is really important. So if we can go to the next slide, I'm just going to talk about a few of the reasons why it's important. So we always want, we're in school, so we always look at the academic. And one of the things we've been really sharing with teachers is how much academic gains they're going to see because they are working with kids on social emotional learning. And as you listen to Rachel and you're thinking about the things like self-management, right? You're thinking about a self-awareness. If kids are dysregulated, if they can't manage their emotions, if they can't work with other people, it's really hard for them to learn. A lot of the 4C work that we've been doing the last few years focuses on collaboration. Can I work with other people? And they've been doing a lot of research, probably in the last 20 years in education, about social emotional learning. What they're finding is overall that most people who have a social emotional learning program like we have at Lindbergh are seeing about an 11% increase in academic achievement. So not only is it just going to make our students better human beings, but it's also going to make them better students, because as they learn to manage their emotions and regulate and work together with each other, they're going to learn more. And so a lot of our teachers are really starting to see gains in that. They're starting to see a lot more class time for academics and not dealing with playground disputes so much, because kids are learning to be able to solve the problems on their own as they learn to manage their own emotions and work with their peers. So we're seeing academic gains because of social emotional learning. Obviously, I think social kind of, it's one of the 3, social emotional learning. The S is social. We want kids to be able to get along with other people, to get along with each other, to get along with adults, people in authority. And so when we teach them those management skills and we teach them friendship skills, not only is it going to help them with friendships, but it's going to reduce risk-taking behavior. That's kind of in this slide. Kids won't take so many risky behaviors in order to be friends with someone. They're going to have really good friendship skills. So it keeps kids safer and increases their feeling of belonging, not only just at school, but with their friends in the neighborhood. It helps them with their family members. It helps them, really across the spectrum. And so just for our kids to feel more comfortable socially, social emotional learning is really important. The other thing is we think in terms of near term and long term. So right now, social emotional learning is important because it increases the likelihood that students are going to buy into school, to feel good about being here, and to graduate. We want students to graduate from Lindbergh and be ready for whatever post-secondary experience they want, whether that's a job, whether that's trade school, whether that's a 4-year college, a 2-year college, whatever they're ready for and they want to do, we want them to be ready to accomplish it. And social emotional learning just has a lot of impact on them being able to have that job and keep that job in the near term, but also in the long term. I think when social emotional learning started to, I'm getting older, so I remember when people started talking about it when I was a young teacher. I think like Daniel Goldman's work around emotional intelligence kind of started that ball rolling. I think that book was in 1995. So it's been a while since we've been talking about it. And really what we said is people can be very smart, but they have trouble navigating the world. And so people don't either know how smart they are or care because they can't get along with their colleagues. They don't know how to work in a group. And so you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't know how to navigate with people around you, respect the people that are in authority over you, you're going to really struggle in the workplace. And people started looking at that. Wow, it isn't just academics that matter for people long term. It actually really is. Do they have the ability to do all 5 of those things that Rachel talked about? So when we want kids to be successful in the long term, we really need them to understand all 5 of those pillars of social emotional learning. And it's the reason that we've branched out, and it's not just the counselor's job anymore. All of our teachers are teaching it. And so those are the reasons that we've invested in it so heavily, because we think it's so important.
Okay,
There we go.
slide 8. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I'm Kim Maddock, I'm the counselor at Long, and I'm going to tell you about the SEL in Lindbergh and the supports. And so, Tony, if you'll go ahead to the next slide for me. Okay, so I'm really going to talk to you about the supports that we have for kids in social emotional learning. So if you look here, these are our tiered interventions, and starting at the bottom in tier 1, this is what we provide for all kids. This is what all students in Lindbergh get. This is our curriculum. This is school-wide expectations. These are our school-wide rules. These are modeled. These are what our teachers instruct. These are all of our programs. This is our second steps programs. These are our school-wide, like our discipline handbook, everything is down here. And this, I will say, this catches about 80% of our students. Most of our students thrive in the tier 1. Some of our students struggle in the social emotional area, and so we need to provide a little bit more support for them. So when those students struggle, we need to give them extra support. So we move them up to what we call tier 2. So we will give them a targeted intervention and move them up to tier 2 and give them some support. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. However, I'm not ready to go there yet. So we will give them an intervention for 6 to 8 weeks and provide that intervention for them and give them that support. And about 15% of our population needs this extra support in tier 2. And what that means is we'll give them extra instruction and provide that for students. Now, if that instruction doesn't help them and support them and give them the what they need, we will push them back up to tier 3 and give them more intensive instruction. So for instance, if I have a kiddo that is on tier 1, they're struggling, let's say they have anger management and they're having trouble controlling their emotions, I might pull them into, I might see them in a group on tier 2. If that's not cutting it, I might, for 6 to 8 weeks, and they're in my small group instruction for 6 to 8 weeks, and we're still seeing some, they're struggling with their emotions, I might push them to tier 3 and maybe see them 3 times a week and give them that intensive instruction. Then they'll participate in that tier 3 for 6 to 8 weeks, so that we can give them that intensive instruction. So those are those tier 3. So if you think about it, 80% of our population is in tier 1, about 15% is in tier 2, and about 5% is in tier 3 that need that instruction. So that's how we support kiddos. So I'll, Tony, if you'll go to that next slide, I'll talk about a little bit about those programs that are in those different tiers. So in tier 1, we have all the counseling lessons. So all of our students, they get us every other week. This year looks a little bit different. It's about every other 3 weeks. But all of our kids, they learn the zones of regulation. where they learn calming strategies when they're upset. They learn mindfulness. We teach that in our curriculum. Our teachers have class meetings in the mornings. We do our second step bullying curriculum. We have calming corners in a lot of our classrooms. Kids are allowed to come to the counselor's office to take breaks. We might meet with kids in one-on-one sessions or in small group, come and chat about things that are upsetting them. So all kids have access to those tier ones. So again, most of our kids, 80% of our kids do well and thrive in that environment. If a kid's struggling, we might give them a little bit more support in tier 2, and we might invite them to a lunch bunch. And they might come in and have lunch with the counselor, or in a small group. We have group counseling. We might have kids that come in for like anger management or anxiety, or we've just anything that they would possibly need. We have scheduled breaks that kids come in. We do mediations with kids. We have restorative conversations with even staff members and kids. If they've, had a rough day with staff, we'll have those mediations where they can work that out with the teachers. With the individual counseling is needed as well. And then tier 3, we do check in and check out with kids. We do mentoring with teachers, meaningful work, and we also have access to things in the community as well, with counseling and that kind of thing. We might even use SSD. Sometimes we work collaboratively with them. They might join a social skills group with a special school district if there's room in one of their special, small group instruction for social skills or what have you. We just use the community and whatever we can. It depends on the needs of the children. So that's how we kind of support our kids, and it's very individual. That's why it makes it kind of difficult to talk about. But whatever the kids need, we will support them in their social emotional needs. But that's kind of what that looks like. All right, those are my slides.
Okay, Tony, next slide. I'm going to go ahead and do the middle and high school slides. So as you'll see, as we go from grade span to grade span, that some of the programs that we offer look different at each level. And again, I go back to kind of what I said at the beginning, that the needs present themselves differently, especially as kids develop. And we also kind of have different models from elementary to middle to high school. One thing I do want to highlight though, that was on the elementary slide and then is also on the middle and high school slide. Within the last few years, there has been a lot of research done by Dr. Lawson, and we have added just some phenomenal research-based programs that give teachers and counselors that curriculum that is targeted and focused to help us have just that overarching goal of belonging and inclusiveness. And so at the elementary level, it's that second step program that the teachers use during those class meetings that Kim mentioned. The counselors have like a subset of that second step program in our curriculum, which targets bullying. And then at the middle school, they've added Character Strong. And I put the Character Strong website at the end of this presentation. If you have time, I mean, it's amazing. Joy and I actually sat on a webinar the other day just to get some information for this little presentation we're doing tonight. But I mean, Character Strong is amazing. And when I talked to the middle school counselors, I actually talked to somebody from Truman and Sparing. They both also just sang the praises of Character Strong. So at the middle school, they're using Character Strong sort of like we are at elementary with second step. Teachers and counselors are using it. And so I do think there's that continuity when we have those programs that Dr. Lawson has found for us, researched. I think that continuity between the counseling department and teachers teaching it in their classrooms, I think it's made our program much stronger. So I just wanted to kind of do a little shout out for that. So if we look at middle school, again, it looks a little bit different from elementary. you know, a lot of things, we do a lot of similar things. We have peace corners at the middle school. We have classroom yoga. Some of the things that I do like at the middle school that are universal, they do them both at Spearing and at Truman. They do a needs assessment with all the kids, just to kind of see what is needed, like at the beginning of the year, what's needed this year from the counseling department to help support kids. Another thing I wanted to highlight at the middle school level is that one at the bottom under tier 1, that access to the therapeutic room and the counseling center areas. So in both buildings, it's not necessarily the same exact program that they have, but there's a therapeutic room at Truman, which is an area that's staffed by a counselor for the kids to go take a break, access either, you know, calming apps or sensory tools to kind of calm down. So it looks like that at Truman, but then at Spearing, they also have like a center area where their counselors are, that I talked to Tina Christenel today, and she said they're really developing that as an access place at Spearing for kids to go and sort of learn how to self-soothe and calm, but then also having that support of a counselor right there. So that's just one example of something that's universally available to kids at middle school, but like each building is doing it the way they feel like it works best for them in their building. So I really do think that creativity is helpful too. If you look at tier 2 in middle school, it's a lot of similar things that we have in the elementary level. So group counseling, they also access youth and need counselors in Provident. We have amazing social workers on staff as well. And so counseling and social work, we're kind of a department together. They function very differently from us, but we do work a lot hand in hand. And then if you look at the tier 3 on middle school, I'm going to move my little Zoom button here so I make sure I don't forget anything. Again, lots of consultation with that partner district of special school district. They are such a huge resource for us when we're talking about social emotional learning. And I feel fortunate in my building with the special school district staff that we have. I mean, we also work very closely together just to support kids in this area. And then at the middle school, they do a lot of things we don't do at the elementary. They might get creative with schedules. They might think about like, how can we make the day a little bit better for a kid if they have struggles in certain areas? So again, looks a little bit different, but again, those goals are still there. It's still kind of the same outcomes that we want to see. And then Tony, if you want to go on to the high school, next slide. So the high school, again, they a lot of similarities, but some differences, and some things I want to highlight at the high school. One of the biggest things I talked to Trisha Hayes at the high school, and she said one of the biggest things that she thinks has been like a game changer at the high school is just having that path once a week by grade. They use a curriculum throughout, and so all the kids at the high school will hear that same curriculum. She said they also access pushing out social emotional lessons through Canvas. They also have their own character council, which is a class that kids come up with social emotional learning curriculum too. But she said the number one thing that she feels like at the high school, especially for that tier 1, is just that relationship building. You know, it starts with the link crew at the beginning of the year. She said, every year they offer some sort of social emotional learning training that teachers can choose. And then she said sometimes it's just as simple as that greeting or daily reminder in the morning. You know, some of that routine that kids have is helpful. And then you'll see for their tier 2, they have a lot of similar things that we also offer at the middle and high school. So some of those outside resources that we have through Children's Services Fund. As always, you know, you can always go in and talk with a counselor. On tier 3, they also use a lot of more outside counseling referrals. And then they also do a lot of re-entry in case kids have had some services outside of school to make sure that that re-entry is good for them as well. So those are basically the tiers at each of our grade levels, grade spans. And then Tony, if you go to that last slide for me, at the district level, obviously we have to have like somebody in charge of like thinking about this stuff. And so Dr. Lawson is on this with us tonight. And so her under her department, we just kind of talk about what are our overarching goals. And so we do have three distinct things that kind of drive those decisions. And so the first is a district committee called Lindbergh Life. And it works on fostering curiosity, creativity, identity, agency, integrity, and inclusiveness. I mean, they come up with amazing things. So that's one way that we come up with ideas. Another is Student Life, which is a board advisory committee, and it collaborates with community members and students to come up with, like, how do we want to make the social and emotional experience of a Lindbergh student better? I mean, really, that's what we do. What do we want kids to experience K-12 and to be ready for when they walk out the door? And then in general, the Student Services Department is a division of teaching and learning, and a part of the Student Services focus is just social emotional learning. So it's researching what's out there, what do we need, what kind of results will we get. So that also drives what we do as a district. Okay. Dory's up.
Hi, and I'm Dory Busby, and I'm one of the counselors at Sappington Elementary. My partner counselor is the amazing Emily Hoover, whom we also share with Kennerly Elementary, and she couldn't be here tonight, but she is new to our district. If you haven't gotten to know her and you are a Sappington or Kennerly family, please make sure that you introduce yourself to her. She would love to get to know you. All right, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about SEL at home, because throughout all of our work that we're sharing with you that we're doing with this, I have found that the last several years, all of you, our amazing parents, are really, really interested in how can you keep it going and support this at home. And we're very thankful for that. So Tony, if you can go to the next slide, just kind of have an overview of that parent question, what can we do at home? And I love when you ask that. It's always a welcome question. First of all, and if nothing else, is to just discuss. Let your kids talk about their feelings. From the time they're little, or even if you have a high schooler now and you haven't done this before, it's not too late to start doing that. Discuss and model kind of go together. So discuss what that feeling is. There's a saying in counseling that you name it and claim it to tame it. So name the emotion, kind of claim what's going on, and then you're able to be regulated with whatever those feelings are. So helping our littles do that by modeling that for them is very, very important. So, you know, I do this with my own children. If I get angry or something, I mean, who does that, right? I might say, okay, I'm feeling this way right now, and maybe I didn't handle it the way I wish I did. Next time I would. And I'm just constantly modeling that for my own children. And that's something that is a really good, and I say easy, it's not easy, but just a simple thing, if you can keep it in the front of your mind to do, that goes a long way in helping show your kids that we're all human. We all have a broad range of emotions. All emotions are okay, but it's how we react and handle those emotions that can make a difference on our social relationships and our family relationships. Encourage, of course, praising our kids for all the amazing things that they do and people that they are is very important. We never want to stop doing that, but it's also really important to be mindful sometimes that we praise effort. So for example, if your students maybe didn't stop as many goals in the soccer game as they had envisioned, praising how hard they did work and trying to reframe that negative thought process into what was positive about the situation is really, really beneficial for a healthy mindset. The next one is limiting, and this talks about technology and screen time, and this can get really tricky and hairy. There are guidelines out there from the American Pediatric Association, and basically, everyone brace yourself. It says that any students that are between 5 and 17 years old, the recommendation is no more than 2 hours per day of screen time. Now, we all know, especially during this crazy year that we've had and weekends and things, that might not be reasonable. So just think about balancing it with, you know, maybe you spend some time outdoors or talking to people in real time, hanging out with friends or family, and then you earn so much screen time. It also really cautions against having students, and particularly when we're talking about elementary and middle school students, taking devices into their room at night. So a great suggestion is to have a common check-in area in your home, maybe a charging station where you know that your student is going to leave their device for the night to charge up, and then their brain is allowed to rest. And then they're also not caught up in any of that social media stuff that tends to become more problematic, for the older students. I also have a website that I will tell you the name of, and then if you don't quite catch it, I'm happy to get it to you in another way, or maybe I can put it in the chat. For all things technology, all the games that your kids like to play and the apps that they have, movies they like, music they're interested in, you can go to commonsensemedia.org, and it really helps guide parents on what is appropriate developmentally and chronological age-wise of what students, what you can expect them to be interacting with in those different apps and things. A lot of times we might think that something is more innocent, so reading about TikTok or some of the other more popular things on Common Sense, and then making an informed decision about what you do and don't want to allow your child to have is a good idea. Allow mistakes. Of course, that's how we grow. We talk a lot in Lindbergh about failing forward, and that's for the students and the adults just as much. So giving ourselves grace too. I think we've really put that to the test during this pandemic year with virtual learning and everything. So just allowing mistakes to happen, accepting, having a lot of conversation with your kids that mistakes aren't bad. That's how we learn and grow. And that as children, that's kind of their job, is to make mistakes. And that is how they learn. And we don't expect perfection or for them to come to things as if they were an adult, because they're not. And then finally is try. So just support your child when they're trying new things. This is really about encouraging them to take risks. And I don't mean like the dangerous kind, but just to push them out of their comfort zone a little bit. That's okay. You're not going to break your kid by pushing them out of their comfort zone a little. I think as parents, we have a natural inclination to sort of want to take away all discomfort and pain for our students, for our children. And when we do that, we actually do them a disservice. So have conversations, let them revel in it a little bit, and go back to the discuss and model of what those feelings are, about what discomfort is, what's challenging, what's hard. And then that will allow them to work through it. And they'll be so much more prepared for all challenges that life brings. And that is the end of my slide.
Here are some references at the end, and then Tony, that last slide. So we're super happy you guys came tonight. We hope you maybe picked up a few nuggets of information. Like I said, if you have specific questions about any of that tiered intervention, just reach out to your building counselor and they can kind of help you navigate that. And if you guys have questions, hopefully we have some answers. And if we don't, we can look them up for you and make sure you get them. So
I do have a couple questions coming in that I just wanted to make sure that everybody, one of the questions that came in, and I answered it the best I could, but it's probably best if you guys are also a part of that. When one parent asked about the bullying resources and if there was any information they could have to help support some of the lessons that you are doing in the building, and I said yes, absolutely. And for other parents who may have the same question, one of the best ways to do that is to contact your school counselors, and they will help share some of the resources. Because one of the reasons why we chose Second Step at the elementary level particularly was because it had a home connection, some documents that can go home to help reinforce some of the talking points that you will see. Now for proprietary reasons, likely we can't just give, we don't have control because of copyright to release all of the information. But if you ever want to take a look at lessons or anything like that, you may definitely come in and view or set up a Zoom or anything to look at some of the videos and all of that. If I could release every video, I would. I think they're really great, and they teach a lot of great things. But you are so open to make any time with the counselor and view anything that you ever want to. But there are definitely things families can do at home to help their students. One of the things that another question regarding this was about protocols and how do students handle the situations. And again, another reason why we really were interested in this at the elementary level, some of these lessons, because it doesn't just teach students how to identify and to stand up to bullying, but it actually asks them to role play and to have that assertive voice in many of those things. So students who are going through the lessons, particularly in a traditional year where we have more time with students, they are actually practicing what they would do in situations. So it's really a great opportunity for students to develop that language on how
Right.
they can stand up for themselves.
Yeah, I think our kids are doing a great job with that overall. I can tell you that my own children were taught by Ann Kleitch, and they will often tell me that I am bullying them because it is repeated. I'm repeatedly asking them to clean their room. I mean, they can tell me the definition of bullying because I'm asking them to clean their room repeatedly and I won't stop. So, so I mean, I'm teasing, but our kids really do learn that definition of what bullying is, what makes it different from somebody that just had a bad day and said something mean. That's not bullying, but if it's happening repeatedly, and we do really work hard on giving kids the words to say, you know, like specifically, how do you respond to someone? If your child, I know the question was like, you know, my kid is really struggling with this and I want to use the same language that you're using, which I think is great. We do have home link papers we can send home to you. And they may not have all come home this year because we didn't get to teach all of our lessons just because this year has been what it is. But we can send all of those papers home, you know, for whatever grade level your child is, so that you can make sure that you're sort of using the same language. So just reach out to your school counselor and they can get you those home link papers for the bullying lessons for your grade so that you can kind of have those conversations. And if you haven't seen the home link papers coming home from the SEL lessons, they're really great. So they're really good activities for you to do to get conversations going with your kids. So I recommend highly doing those lessons with those home link papers with your kids when they come home.
Another
encourage you- yeah.
was PAC lessons at the high school. And so one of the things I do not think that PAC has been done this year the way it has been done in the past due to, you know, trying to keep students in as limited as possible and exposure to other students. But PAC is a very important part of the high school. They do a great job with it. It serves more than just social emotional learning time. It also is a great time for students to reflect on college and career readiness and coursework and the things that they're going to do post-secondary, which really is social emotional, getting our kids ready for successful futures. So PAC, I would say, is not taking place the way it has in the past, but it is a part of the makeup of Lindbergh High School. And when we can have things back to traditional experiences, we will have it back in place and more social emotional learning taking place there as well.
The one thing I was going to say too, I would encourage families. I would encourage to get on Second Step and Character Strong's websites because there are home sections and examples of the lessons that we do use both in those class meetings that teachers are teaching and then also the lessons that counselors are teaching. So both of those websites, Second Step for elementary and Character Strong for middle school. If you look on there, it's a plethora of resources for families too.
Another question on the in the Q&A is regarding Children's Service Fund and how do we access Children's Service Fund? And your first contact, please call your school counselors. Children's Service Fund, you guys pay for it with your tax dollars, and so it is definitely something you should be accessing all the time. We use it. It's one of the greatest partnerships ever. We have so many resources to help support our kids with therapeutic needs, just mentoring needs, anything about health and safety, drugs and alcohol, we use it. These are experts that are here to support all schools in St. Louis County. It's a St. Louis County initiative. So I would encourage you to contact your school counselor to see what you are looking for because it is a long library of resources. And to help, or to go back to a question that was asked before, you know, that is where if you need family services, after school hour tutoring, mentoring, excuse me, not so much tutoring, I'm sure there's probably something in there, more mentoring and or counseling, that it is really your go-to. And we're talking from as little of a once a week meeting maybe with someone, once a month meeting with someone, to some pretty intensive therapeutic supports, maybe even some inpatient, you know, supports for more significant needs.
Jill, can I also just real quickly add to that? If you are also just looking for an outside counselor as well, Children's Services Fund does cover some of those agencies that we work with: Youth in Need, Provident, Presbyterian Children's Home, and you can contact them directly as well. We would always suggest, you know, we want to help support you, and those therapists are available in school. It's not another appointment that you have to make. But a lot of those funds are available just if you call the agency directly as well.
Just to kind of finish it off, if you have a specific need or you have identified something or a concern with your student, especially during this year with COVID and just the lack of connection that the pandemic has brought about, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your school counselor and start there and problem solve with them, identifying that problem and what resources can we do to help. We are here to work with you in any possible way. So if you notice your child is struggling for any particular reason, our administrators, counseling staff, and our social workers are here to work with you on your child's individual needs. Okay, well, I'm going to, if there are no other questions, I am going to just say thank you so much to our school counselors and our school social workers who also have a lot of input and support in what we do. Also want to thank Special School District who provides some amazing supports in counseling, social work, social emotional skills. They're a great partnership and one that we enjoy collaborating with because they have a lot of great resources. And so if you are a part of Special School District and you ever access any of their resources, you'll find that they have a lot to help educate and continue the learning if you want to learn more about this as well. But we are just very grateful for you taking the time to meet with us tonight. And we are here if you ever have any questions or want to learn more. So please reach out. And thank you so much for your time. And counselors, thank you so much for the great presentation.